Hey, good evening, everyone. TJ Alls of I-45 now, and welcome to our first of a series, or it's actually our second of a series of forums we're doing for the election for May of 2021. Yes, it feels like we just finished up the election of 2020, and we did actually in December and into early January, but we're back again getting ready for the May elections. And tonight we are focused on the candidates for mayor. The three candidates for mayor in the city of Kemah. We have, in one of the rare occasions in which everyone is here, he's either a current mayor or former mayor or councilman of the city. And we're here tonight to go through the format. We have with us Mayor Terri Gale, the incumbent, former Mayor Carl Joyner, and former Mayor Matt Wiggins. Sorry, Matt. I got a little cough there, but Matt Wiggins.
Thanks,
sorry
PJ.
about that.
Nice to meet you.
Like I forget your name or anything like that. And this is a virtual event tonight. And I should stress to folks is you can watch us here on our page as well as the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce's page. We're glad to have everyone on. We are not going to be taking questions from the audience, however, as per agreement of what we do in these forums, is that the questions are actually submitted ahead of time, and we solicit those from not only our chamber partners, but also from the community as well. And we had a lot of questions come in for this one. This is going to be one of the more interesting races to pay attention to this year. The format is pretty simple. This is a Q&A session all the way through. There are no time limits, although I do ask the candidates to be brisk in their answers as much as they can. But we do want to give the candidates, everyone, a chance to really explain what their thought. So there's no 60-second or 30-second time clock on them. They're going to give their answers here. And my job is just to moderate that back and forth. Now, unlike the forums in the past, you'll actually see some of the questions or most of the questions pop up on screen when I ask them. Then at the end, each of the candidates will be having to have a chance to go ahead and give up to 3 minutes for what we call their elevator speech or their final speech. And how that drawing of who goes first, second, or third is up to a random number that I have already selected here on my phone. And so I'm going to give the incumbent, Terri Gale, a chance to say her number, then by Carl Joyner, and then Matt Wiggins to give your say of which number. So Mayor Gale, you first.
I'll take number 2.
Number 2. It's 1 through 10, by the way. I should point out. Carl?
5.
5. And Matt?
6.
6. It was actually the number 5. So, Carl, you will have a chance. Do you want to go first, second, or third at the end?
Third.
Third. All right. And then since you were closer, Matt, at 6 after that, you get the next pick. So you have either first or second.
I'll take first.
All right. And then Mayor Gale, you will go second when we wrap up things here at the end. All right.
Okay.
So that is how our set will go at the end for their 3-minute elevator speeches. We welcome everyone on board with us. If you're just joining us, this is the Mayoral Forum on I-45 now in partnership with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce. Reminder, the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce tomorrow morning at the Walden Station having Galveston County Commissioner Ken Clark for a breakfast meeting. You want to be there for that. And then coming up on April 15th, we have 2 more forums scheduled with the partnership with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce. And those are for the candidates of Clear Creek ISD School Board. Position 5 candidates will be at 5 o'clock on the 15th, and the at-large candidates will be at 6 o'clock. Glenn Friedman will be moderating that. And you may have seen our forum with the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce where Dr. Friedman had also handled that as well. Now, before we get going here, as I explained to you the rules before, I do want to give a full disclosure here. And all of the candidates are aware of this ahead of time. And I did ask them if they were comfortable with me moderating this. I should point out that one member of the city council in Kemah has a business relationship with us. We don't own the same companies, separate companies, but we do have a business relationship that's pretty tight. And I do want to make sure that everyone understands that I am an unbiased participant in this. I did check with all the candidates ahead of time, make sure they were comfortable with me being the moderator. If they weren't, I would have picked someone else to do that tonight. So that's full disclosure to get into that. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it yet. And Mayor, since you'll be going last or first, I should say, when we do the bets a little bit later, Matt, this first question is going to be for you. And so the first question up, and this has been a hot topic of recently here, with the recent drunken and lawless behavior, including incidents in which 3 Kemah police officers were injured, what needs to be done to improve public safety in the Lighthouse District? And Matt, that'll go to you first.
I think, first of all, we need to restaff our police department. We've been low on staff in the police department for a while. And we need to, budget for a full staff and also budget for some part-time people to come in on the weekends. We need to re-equip them. I think on the 6th Street problems that we have, I think you bring in four-wheelers where we can get people from one spot to another quickly, especially when there's traffic on a weekend and we have problems. And I think we bring in we've had a number of problems down there. We had 3 straight weekends where a Kemah police officer was assaulted feloniously. I think they need to be those felons need to be thrown under the jail. I think you could bring in undercover officers for the drug problem we have. I think we bring in our drug dog and watch him do some work. That should be quite a show. I would put surveillance equipment and additional lighting on 6th Street and a lot of lighting, really brighten it up. I would charge for parking on 6th Street charge for parking on the City Hall lot, what we call the City Hall lot, to fund the 6th Street patrol, which needs to be a regular patrol. If that doesn't do the job, I would set up a convex holding cell on 6th Street with another building to hold the judge, and we'll just hold them there, judge them that night before they take a ride down to Galveston. Enough is enough for the shenanigans on 6th Street.
All right. Thank you, Matt. And Mayor Gale, same question to you now.
Thank you, TJ. We had been short-staffed, but I'm pleased to report that now we are almost completely at the level of staff that we were at when I took over. When I took over, we had a chief, assistant chief, 15 officers, 2 on reserve, and 5 in dispatch and records management. We now have the chief, assistant chief, 14, and 2 part-time officers, 5 dispatch and records management, as well as 2 part-time dispatchers. So we are nearly full staff thanks to the recovery we've been through. That said, we've got a long way to go. One of the things that I'm proud of is that our police chief has worked tirelessly since last May, and our assistant chief, as well as myself, to meet with the business owners and address some of these issues head on. The politicization of the problems did not help, but we have been able to gain reinforcements from the other agencies, and it's not prudent to advertise when we're going to have undercovers on site, but we have had multiple agencies, including DPS, the Sheriff's Office, and TABC on site multiple times, and we have, I believe, done a really good job of turning the situation around. We've also worked with the business owners to address the kind of music that they play, the issues that they've had with serving underage, and their security issues. Our next steps are to continue that momentum. We have a regular cadence on our meeting with the business owners, make sure that they remain committed, and potentially even mandate, if we need to, that they also bring on peace officers for their on-site security. We also have brought in a paddy wagon, for lack of a better way to call it, but we do need to continue to address vehicle replacement, equipment replacement. There's always room for some improvements, although we've made some significant improvements to the lighting and the surveillance since I've been in office. There's probably room for more of that, certainly on location there. And we need to make sure that we, as I said, keep our officers safe and equip them with what they need to address a problem swiftly, contain the suspect safely, and then move on to continue to police down there.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mayor. And Carl, same question to you, sir.
Well, I think Terry and Matt both have really good ideas there. And when I was mayor, we had Police Chief Chris Reed, who did a really good job down there in kind of a community policing. And rather than arrest people, he would get them an Uber and send them home so they weren't spending all their time on paperwork, et cetera. But I've also had some discussions with the bar owners, and I really think they're all okay with maybe forming kind of an association amongst themselves where they pitch in and they pay Kemah for the protection that they get down there. I don't think it should be on the citizens of Kemah to have 4 or 5 officers down at the 6th Street to patrol that area and pay for that. So I think that's how we get that done. But we're going to have police down there, and we're going to have to act immediately if the noise ordinance is being violated. They need to be ticketed right away. And I think that, again, when I was mayor, we didn't have a problem down there. But when I become mayor, I think we can get to this and have it settled pretty quickly.
All of y'all brought up actually topics in one way or another that are in our next series of questions, which is probably good. And that comes into, the next question was going to be anyway on a busy weekend, nights and holidays. Should there be more of that visible police presence? I think we're hearing that from all three of you in this case. But Mayor Gale, let me ask you as a follow-up, when you talk about the enforcement that's come down there, is that how much is that costing the city of Kemah? And after a while, it's great to have those outside agencies willing to come in to help. But after a while, there's going to be a funding issue. How does that get funded to make sure that's happening on a more regular basis? And there was here in recent weekends, for example, 6th Street, essentially that goes right through the bar area, lack of a better term, there from Bradford to Kip, I guess would be the best description, was essentially shut down. Pedestrian traffic, only cars on either end. Is that something that should be implemented on a more regular basis?
Well, it actually is implemented every weekend, TJ, and that started, I think, last summer, where we started shutting down the streets, particularly 6th Street between Bradford and Kip, so that we can allow cars to leave on the Kip side, but no one to enter. So that's already being done, and that has helped quite a lot to contain the traffic. We did have a drive-by incident that was a targeted shooting that was not related to anything to do with Kemah. But we wanted to make sure that we continue to contain the situation and keep people out of the line of fire. So we have contained the street. From a funding standpoint, that is an interesting dilemma. We've had, as you know, some budget impacts due to COVID, and that was very unfortunate. But we believe we're on the road to recovery now. We've still got a long ways to go in our budget. And unfortunately, some of the previous budget decisions haven't left us much to work with. But I think that the council is as committed as I am to making sure that public safety, additional officers as we need them, and police equipment, particularly vehicles, to make sure that they stay safe, as well as any other public safety requirements, are the top priority for our budget.
Mayor, let me ask you though, I mean, how has there been a price tag estimated of how much that added enforcement may cost going this point forward? I know right now the agencies are all kind of chipping in and the city is not having to contribute, but if there is going to be a cost factor with that, Mayor, Carl brought this up, and I'll come back around to you on that, Carl, is about having kind of a consortium pay for thing. In fact, it's been proposed by the bars, some of the bar owners themselves, about paying extra for their fees and the like. And I just wonder if it comes into there. And first, let me ask you, Mayor, and I'll go back to you, Carl, on that of having those fees assessed one way or another to actually cover those costs.
We have talked about that. In fact, that was Harry White's idea, and I'm sure he brought it up to the other two candidates as well. He has proposed that to the other owners, and we've also entertained a mandate of just an ordinance requiring them to have on-duty police officers, not filtering through the city. So that we are trying to push as much of that expense to them as we can. But as you can imagine, many of them are small business owners. So we're taking the paces that we can take, and we are lucky to have the additional agencies chipping in right now. There are some things also that consortium could not do, like the undercover work.
Right. Carl, you had brought it up too. You've talked with some of you said you've talked to some of the bar owners, bar/restaurant, because many have changed kind of, of things, but where liquor sales are heaviest down there, let's just put it that way. What is your thought of, and what would that extra payment be to have that security, and what type of force? Because right now, some people have their own a security force, not necessarily law enforcement officers, which may not, who can only kind of work inside the doors and the like. But how do you see that working funding mechanism wise? And Matt, I'll come to you next.
Well, again, the owners down there on 6th Street really don't like the idea of having their own staff, because they can't arrest people. They basically can't do what a police officer does. The other thing that comes into play is kind of the liability issues. That's why we talked about an association or something like that, to where each owner pays in based on the receipts that they have for the evening or whatever, to where they need at a minimum, there needs to be 4 officers down there. And Terry's right about the fact that some of those are going to be undercover, and our police dog sometimes will be down there or whatever. But those 4 main officers that need to be down there need to be paid by the 6th Street owners and not on the citizens of Kemah. And I really believe that they're amenable to that. And I really think with the police presence that the beatings and things like that have been going on are slowly going to stop, and we get that under control, because it's important to Kemah that people feel safe coming here. And I'm afraid that isn't totally true now. I was having lunch with my wife today, and she, one of the people there kind of mentioned, she was young. She goes, my parents don't let me go to Kemah anymore. Well, we don't need that. So I appreciate what the mayor's been working on. It's been a difficult situation. It's totally changed from when I was mayor. There's a whole lot more people there. It's growing. But these bar owners are going to have to start policing themselves also. And again, I think Harry White really has done a lot of things to control the noise from his area. And we've just got to get the other bar owners on the same page to make these things happen.
Matt, let me go to you on that. How do you envision? You talked about having, the jail, like the mayor said, a paddy wagon or some type of setup down there, even having a magistrate judge on site too, to process faster. But how do you envision making that work? And how much of it should come from extra payments from the bar owners, or how much of it from the regular taxpayers' dollars? Again, separating out any undercover work you have to do, drug stings and the like that. I think most people would agree those are things that are extra. You come in some added enforcement that can probably take care of themselves. But how would you envision that, Matt?
I think you charge for parking, and you use the money off the parking to have a regular 6th Street patrol down there on Friday and Saturday. Definitely Friday and Saturday. When you're asking somebody to pay a portion of their sales, I don't know how you work that at a level that is fair for everybody down there. We have a bunch of bars in town. Some of them are on 6th Street, some of them are not on 6th Street. So the bad people go where bad people are welcome, and I think we need to make 6th Street very unwelcome for bad people. And if you charge for parking, that's going to weed out some of the people that just come down there and hang and really don't even spend any money.
Is there concern though, if you charge for parking, then it just kind of drifts parking? People are going to look for free parking as much as they can, and it drifts over in some of the nearby neighborhoods. That's one of the things that's kind of unique with Kemah versus other tourist destinations, is you really have the living spaces on top of the entertainment district. I mean, within blocks. Is there a concern there, Matt, that if you charge for parking, then folks are going to look for free parking and then end up in the streets and on city streets and the like?
We charged for parking up to about 3 or 4 years ago when we stopped charging for parking on that lot, and we charged for parking on weekends and when we were busy. Most of the time you could shoot a cannon off down there and nobody would get hurt. But on Friday and Saturday nights, we did charge for parking. And back then, I think it was producing about $125,000 a year. Our liquor tax money is only like $250,000. We could spend a whole lot more than those two numbers together, just securing that one little 300-foot stretch of street. So I think you charge parking, and you charge for parking and let the people that are causing the trouble pay for it.
Carl, let me ask you here, because you had brought up about, somehow maybe working on the receipt. So would that apply only to a certain area, like an overlay district? Because, there's liquor sales over at the Kemah Boardwalk. I can't speak for him. I'm quite certain if that were to be the proposal, we'd hear from Tillman Fertitta pretty quickly, that listen, I have my own security forces here. We don't have those issues. And what's good for the goose comes to the gander. There may be some complaints that, hey, down the way, the biggest gorilla on the street doesn't have to pay the same thing. Is there a concern there, or do you do like an overlay district, say only this area to this area?
It's an overlay district because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've had a whole lot of problems down at the boardwalk, and quite frankly, the other bars that we have here, I don't think we've had a problem with. It's just that we get too many people on 6th Street. And, I think a dress code might help a little bit as far as people that come down there. And I think Matt alluded to that a little bit. And really, I feel comfortable that they're willing to do this because they want a real police officer that is working for maybe Kemah or a sheriff's office or what, but they are true officers that can control the crowd and not just point to someone and go, you're being unruly, leave the facility. Well, they need to be arrested right there, or like Chris Reed did, he would, if they're just had too much to drink and they're not really causing trouble, let's get them an Uber and send them home.
Yeah, and that may be something as well to cut a deal. That seemed to work effectively there. Mayor Gale, let me ask you along the lines of a law enforcement presence there. There are some communities, not as heavily tourism-based as Kemah are, that do require, where there are liquor sales, that an off-duty officer, but in some cases not those from their own community, is hired, has to be in uniform, and there's always these groups that hire off-duty officers to work there. Is that something you would support?
Yes, it is. In fact, we've talked about that with the owners as well, and that is one option. So I certainly would support that. I support the association idea. I have not seen that that's caught on with the other owners quite yet, but at our last meeting, we discussed that we needed to make sure that they were all committed to addressing this issue aggressively. And so far, they have really stepped up. There's, again, room for improvement, room for additional presence. And I do think that the funding of that should, to some extent, fall on them. But that said, we're still going to have at least 4 police officers, sometimes 5, down on that street, no matter what. We can make other calls from there if we need to, but we want to make sure that they know that Kemah's on duty, and Kemah is not a place to be messed with.
Gotcha. And to what Carl had brought up, I asked Carl, I should say, about, well, if there was extra fees, or like, do you envision that as kind of a narrow overlay district of certain parts of the town, or would that extend all the way to the waterfront where the Kemah Boardwalk is? As I said, that may be something that Landry's won't be too thrilled about if they were to have to apply to the same regulations as the others.
I'd like to see it apply more uniformly than just 6th Street, because we do have additional off-site businesses. Molly's is a few blocks away. We've got one on 5th, etc. So the problem isn't isolated to 6th, and people who can't do what they want to do on 6th, especially those who haven't spent the money to park in the paid parking area, but as you said, have drifted a few blocks away to a residential area, will find a darker spot. They'll find a more isolated spot without cameras, and they'll do their negative business there. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that contained as much as possible. We continue to patrol that outer perimeter, but we want to make sure that we're keeping that contained. We do have a ride share lane now too, which we've just implemented a few months ago to help facilitate Uber and sending people home who have had too much to drink. But I think back to your funding issue, your question, I definitely would support that if that's what the business owners will agree to do. We've told them that if they don't do it, we're going to put an ordinance in place that they will have to have their own security. I do think it should extend way beyond 6th Street.
How many more incidents have to happen though before? I mean, 3 officers hurt here in recent. This is not like over a year. This is in recent times. How long until the hammer comes down in your mind, then, Mayor?
Well, the hammer has come down. So, quite frankly, we're at a 0 tolerance now.
Gotcha, Matt. About the question about having paid uniform off-duty officers in there to supplement the Kemah police force that's already working the area. Would you be supportive of that, and that those officers are paid for out of each facility's pockets?
Yes.
That's it. No, you don't want to elaborate. I just want to make sure. If you want to elaborate.
It's kind of simple. Yes, do that.
We're doing good so far, guys. You're playing along with me really well here. As we're only 26 minutes in, we've actually got a lot covered in that. If those of you just joining us, you are watching the Kemah Mayoral Forum presented by I-45 Now in partnership with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce. Joining us is Carl Joyner, former Mayor Matt Wiggins, and current Mayor Terri Gale. And again, this is a unique setup where everyone in the screen, except me, by the way, has had experience as mayor of Kemah in one way or another. So that's an interesting setup there. And it gets to the big question of funding for Kemah PD. And Mayor Gale, I'm going to start with you on this one. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and this was something I should note that you were not really supportive of when the proposal was made last summer about cutting police staffing at a time when you're looking at the pandemic early on, what effects it's going to be. One, you had said early on in this conversation that there were more staffing. Now we're almost back to what normal levels were before, but it's still going to be a challenge with a smaller police department of not only getting those staffing levels there, but having the backup in there and making sure salaries stay paid so you don't leave, because it costs more to actually train an officer than to keep, then they go off somewhere. I'm just wondering where is that now overall for Kemah, not just about 6th Street? And does it need to get better though?
You're absolutely right that it's about a lot more than just the straight budget. So from a budgetary standpoint, I would say that our salaries are not quite competitive, but we've always known that. We are a smaller city. And so very often we do get some younger officers, but we have also had some very good seasoned, experienced officers who have come to our city to lend their experience and help train our more junior officers. We've got one very senior, well-known officer, Brian Getches, who I'm so proud to have in our city. Really, really proud. He's a shining star in our department. The leadership that he and Walter Gant and Mark Hinson have all provided, as well as the sergeants at the next level down, the leadership is critical. They have created a culture that didn't exist before. The culture when I first came in was toxic. And we had a consultant report that was 8 months old that had, I think it was around 37 improvement areas, most of which had not been addressed. So making sure that we have the right structure foundation in place, that we've got the right culture in the police department, that they're getting development opportunities, promotion opportunities, as well as where we can afford to give, additional pay increases, benefits, et cetera. That's all very important. We try to make sure that our police department also feels a sense of community amongst themselves. They've got the Kemah Peace Officers Association, and they, of course, well support the Citizens Police Academy, which is about to restart, I think, this year. So they've got some great opportunities to help show their community support, be a part of the community, and make sure that they feel like Kemah is home for them.
And the second part of that question is that if you were able to increase funding here, well, let me ask you about this: is it improved enough now that you could safely say we're back to those levels now? We can afford that full department and any extras that it was before the pandemic set in, or is it still kind of teetering at this point?
Well, fingers crossed. The sales tax that we received, the revenues we received in the month of March were for the month of January. And they actually exceeded what we had received in March 2 years ago, March of 2019, well before anybody ever heard of COVID, thank God. So I believe we're on the road to recovery. What will really be telling for us is when we get the sales tax for the month of March. That will come in early May. We haven't seen the numbers yet for April or for February that would come in April. But yeah, I believe we're on the road to recovery. If there's another wave, we have to be prepared to shift gears and make sure that we're prepared for that. And that is one reason that bringing on part-time officers gives us a little more flexibility. But yes, I will be proposing another 2 headcount for the upcoming budget, as well as we need to start replenishing our police vehicles. The newest vehicle they have is 10 years old, and we cannot expect police officers to chase suspects in police vehicles that don't work.
Yeah, that's a fair point there as well, because it's more than just the officers on the street. It's also about the equipment that's around them and where those priorities go. Matt, let me ask you then the same question is that, should there be more funding for Kemah PD? You started off with that, saying there should be more officers out and about. Where do you see the funding for Kemah Police Department? How big of a priority was it? And where would you find the extra funds to meet any goals you may have?
The consulting report that was mentioned earlier, I'm the one that insisted on us doing that report. And it was an eye-opening report, as Terry said. The cars that they're driving right now were bought when I was mayor. That's a long time ago. And it is time to refund all that stuff. I think in our situation right now, we have to bet on something that's going to get us out of the mess we're in. And I think we fund our police department. You do that first, and you start working back down the hill on everything else. You make your cuts all the way down from there. But I think you do the police department first and foremost, and you just don't worry about anything else that's going on.
And Carl, to you as well, having been in the seat when some of these decisions were made, where do you see funding for the Kemah PD? And if elected again as mayor, where was that go as your priority, and where should that funding be if you're a mayor again?
Well, I agree with Matt and Terry that public safety is probably our number one concern in Kemah right now, because it affects so many things. I'm aware of the study that was done, and I know that Chris Reed actually made presentations to council back then on a number of those issues that he was addressing. I do know that when Chris Reed was police chief, we did buy new vehicles because in Hurricane Harvey, several of our vehicles were flooded. And so we got insurance funds to replace the vehicles. But yeah, we have to fund our police, and we have to work on our reputation so that people start seeing Kemah as a shining star and not a place where crime is an issue. So I agree with both Terry and Matt that this is an issue that needs to be addressed first.
And let it be known that we have all 3 candidates actually agreeing on the priority listing here for that. Despite what you see on social media, we actually have an agreement here going on so far. So I do appreciate that. Although I do need to bring up, Mayor, I am quite, as a longtime friend of Brian Getchus, I should point out, I mean, we used to attend church together and the like when I lived in Texas City. I'm not so sure he'll like the senior comment out of that. I think experience he'll go along. I'm just joking with you.
Hey, I'm older than he is.
Yeah,
I'm older than
he is. But he is. I will say this personally, knowing him and Mark Hinson, by the way, good additions to help out Chief Gant with what he's got to go there. Let's talk a little bit about what becomes an issue too. With obviously, Kemah is a big-time tourist destination, but still, it's unlike a lot of areas that lacks the walkable pathways and the available parking. Matt's talked about that some, and I know that's the parking issue has been something that all 3 of you all have talked about at one time or another. As mayor, what plans would you support to improve pedestrian use and parking? And I'll go with you first, Matt.
These issues, this is just a different time that we're talking about this. We have the pathways running from, I guess, 9th all the way down to the boardwalk in all the blocks. That was my idea when I was president of the KCDC way back. And we need to do a whole lot more walkability. We need to dedicate some funds to parking around the Holiday Inn that we could convert into commercial parking for our guests. You have to make some kind of plans for a parking situation as it grows. Right now, we get stung. We got stung really bad during spring break. We have 4th of July coming up, and the boat lane used to be a bigger problem than it has been the last couple of years. But on a general basis, we probably have enough, but we do need to put in more parking. Now we've added sidewalks in a whole bunch of parts of the city leading down to the boardwalk. And when you come down here on a weekend and you're sitting there watching everything, people still walk in the street. And I don't know why that happens, but it still happens here. But I think there's, getting some parking, on the other side of Texas in a little bit more under the bridge. If we can work out a deal with TxDOT about filling under the bridge and getting some more parking over there. The Goodman Corporation, when they looked at redoing all of our transportation, had a swinging bridge, which was not that expensive and not that expensive to operate, that would cross the channel in the marina at the aquarium. So part of it is keeping the deadlock out of the north of 6th Street and just down in the boardwalk area. But you got to find the funding for it. You got to be dedicated to the funding part of it and make it a priority.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Carl, let me go to you first. All of y'all are mayors. I get confused with that. I've called you mayors at one time or another in our career. Carl, the same question to you about the making it more walkable and also helping with parking situation in the mainly is that in that core area beyond 6 and on, I should say.
Well, once again, I would agree with Matt, and Terry hadn't had a chance to talk yet, but we've been talking about our parking problem in Kemah for years, and it's kind of amazing. Like Matt said, there's times when all the parking is totally empty, and then all of a sudden we have a spring break, and then we're totally gridlocked. But back when Chris Reed was chief, he really had people working the traffic lights on 146, and there was probably an officer at each of the streets that you could come in to Kemah, so that at one point, when we were maxed out with parking, we had to turn people away from Kemah, which I don't know if that's worse than them sitting in traffic for 2 hours or whatever, but at spring break, I live about a mile from the boardwalk, and it was gridlock on Kip, and people that happened to live down on 6th Street in that area, it took them an hour and a half to get home. Well, that's unacceptable, and so we've got to do a better job until we get more parking to control the traffic that we do have. When I was mayor, we did talk about with the extension of Bell Road going over to the other side of 146, the High Lines there, we did have negotiations with Centerpoint to possibly park cars there so that they didn't have to get into the hard part of Kemah where everything was gridlocked, and then run buses from there down Bell and then down Kip to get them to the boardwalk, which is for the most part where everyone's going. So as mayor, we've got to continue to study this, and if we have a crawfish boil or anything like that, we tend to gridlock the people, and it's not fair to the citizens. I mean, as a citizen, I should be able to get out of my driveway when we have something going on in Kemah, and I can't, and I don't like that, and other citizens don't either. So that's what I would do, is maybe get some of the parking away from the boardwalk area and get it on the other side of 146, so that when those cars leave, they're not gridlocking on 146 either.
And Mayor Gale, same question to you. I'll come back. I have some follow-ups on this too, by the way. Mayor?
Yeah, I have a number of points to make on this. First of all, to the walkability, we about a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we asked our engineering firm to look at what it would take to put sidewalks in, specifically on Bradford, because we do have that problem that people still walk in the street. They'll be pushing a baby, stroller. Worries me to death. However, unfortunately, because of the construct and the confines of just having one lane going each direction, which we have all throughout Old Kemah, which is the area we're talking about, we are limited in what we can do. The sidewalks our engineer came back and said sidewalks are just not feasible in some areas, in some parts of that string all along Bradford, which is unfortunate. So we have looked at the walkability. We do have some alleyways but they don't extend all the way down to the boardwalk. We do have a better opportunity for people to walk on the sidewalks over on Kip. So I know that the officers make an attempt to direct them over there. Just last night at the city council meeting, we were talking about this very issue. And in working with the boardwalk, our police officers have come up with a traffic flow pattern, a one-way pattern to implement. We've tried this before. I don't know that it was in place on spring break. I don't believe it was, but we did have an unprecedented number of people trying to get to Kemah that day. Everybody was out. It was a beautiful day on the Saturday that Carl refers to. Very frustrating for the citizens, very frustrating for the visitors, but people were coming here all the way, traffic was backed up all the way to Red Bluff. So I can tell you that we could not have predicted the level of the crowd, and even Jacob Bigger, who runs the Kemah Boardwalk, confirmed this was a record-setting day for the boardwalk as well, and they could not have predicted the crowd that showed up. We even tried to direct them down the street to the Texas Avenue lots until they filled up, and I think to one of the points Carl made, at some point you have to start turning people away. But what we have come up with is a pattern that we think will work well. So our officers are going to be implementing that and trying it for the next couple of months, even on just regular weekends, since we're starting to see spring break level crowds on non-spring break weekends. So they are implementing those changes to try to see if we can at least help with the traffic flow. In terms of the parking, TxDOT will not be filling in the area under the bridge. They don't have the environmental permission from the GLO to do that, and that would require an environmental study. It would also not give us the opportunity that we now have to get our boat ramp back, which is very important to the marine community. So TxDOT will be putting the boat ramp back. There is room for more parking under the bridge. We did talk about parking on the other side of 146. We talked about shuttles. The shuttles, from the experience of the other city council members, they have all indicated that it was very expensive and only minimally effective. And we don't have a crossover for people who want to walk, who park on the other side of 146 and want to walk to Kemah. So we do have a real problem there. We need to continue to come up with a solution. And I don't know that I have the right answer right now, but we are trying some different things. Off-site parking is definitely needed.
Sorry, the issue of parking one side or another of 146 has been long debated. There was the time, Carl and Matt, y'all were on opposite sides for a long time on the parking garage idea too. And it is one of those things with the city of Kemah that when you need the parking, it's not there. When you don't need it, it's too much, depending. As Matt said earlier, you could shoot a cannon down the street sometimes. It just depends when everyone shows up. And to Mayor Gale's point is that there are those times you just don't know when the crowds are going to show up because it is a random thing. I know of 2 years ago in which gridlock came because of a country music artist that really no one in my realm even had heard of, but all the youngsters had, and they packed the boardwalk for that guy, and you couldn't get in. It was one of the worst. I should point out, while and no offense to Mayor Joyner for the time talking about Chris Reed, I will point out Greg Reichert actually had the directing of traffic out there when he was chief, and I covered that story many years ago, and it had worked. And that's the first time we saw those barricades go up on that little cut through that was by what was used to be the old boat shop there as well. But thank you all for that one. That's so good. But it goes into, Mayor, you had talked about that crossover, and this may go into that for the State Highway 146 expansion that's ongoing right now. And it poses a problem, especially for traffic in and out of the city. You get that jam at 6th Street, particularly if you're coming from the Seabrook side on over, folks trying to turn left. And it's right now, obviously, because of construction, it's kind of that short, you have no extended turn lane. It is a real short turn lane, so it blocks the regular traffic. But for now, with the summer season here, and I will start with you on this one, Matt. With summer season here, what do you propose to lessen the traffic snarls that tie up traffic, particularly on those busy dates?
The plan that we used to use, basically when the boardwalk got full and the parking was full from 6th Street north, you cut off the entrance at 6th Street and moved it down to 7th Street. And when that filled up, you cut off 7th Street and you moved down to 8th Street. And so you just moved it on down. And then you also had people coming in the back way on Kip Street down where by Carl's house. So you kept 10th Street open as the relief valve for the city. And that plan should be in place every weekend, because we can't predict when these people are going to start showing up down here. But you basically stopped it from getting worse. And I don't know what we do, because the right of way, the center point right of way under the High Lines, by the bridge has been used for city parking for quite a while. And we don't have any access to that side, or if they do, they've got a long walk back down 2094 so they can cross 146 with the lights. I think we just have to live through it and do the best we can. But there's going to be times when we don't have an answer.
Carl, same question to you, sir.
Well, again, I didn't mention a while ago about the pedestrian walkway that we had looked at having starting at 7th Street, running down Bradford all the way to the boardwalk. But the problem of it is, to have that, then you got to give up the parking. So that just never flied. And then again, back to the traffic problem. The long-term plan was when I was mayor, was to take the traffic down Kip, turn on Bell, cross at the light, and continue over. And then we had the right of way to go all the way from 518 to 96. So we were going to take the traffic out that way and somewhat keep it off of 146. The other thing is, when we were looking at parking underneath the electric lines on the other side of 146, people would be, instead of coming to Kemah on 146, we'd have them come down 518 or 96 and then come into that parking area. So they never get into the gridlock area. But again, we need the road cut through all the way from 518 to 96 for that to happen. So there's some good things being planned. And as you know, Kemah has no debt, and we do everything within the means that we have. And so it's going to take us a while to get all this fixed, but I think we have some good ideas moving forward on this.
Mayor Gale, same question to you, ma'am.
Well, I think the other two candidates have pretty well covered it, but I would add a couple of things. Sending the traffic down Kip and across Bell sends a lot of traffic through a highly residential neighborhood, as I know Carl knows, because he lives on that street, as do I. And we have installed some speed humps. We are preparing to install some heftier speed bumps to try to control the speed on that street. But that's a bit of a dangerous prospect to send that much traffic through a residential neighborhood like that. We are looking at several of the outlets using 7th Street, 8th, 9th, 10th, and we did talk about some of that last night. It will take some time to work through this, and as both candidates pointed out, we are self-funded, so we unfortunately don't have a lot in reserves or in our capital funds to spend on this, but it is a priority.
Mayor, you had mentioned that that folks not wanting to who want to park maybe across 146, but want to walk into Kemah there. And I have never looked at it to see if TxDOT has ever put into plans of some safe crosswalk. It's hard to say, let's have a safe crosswalk over a state highway. That's just, it may not be feasible. But would you support something like that, or even a if TxDOT could come up with it, or somebody come up with a funding for a bridge or some type of safe walkway that would get across maybe there that comes at the community center?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that works well. I mean, if you go down to the stadium, for example, people walk a long way to get from where they're parked to get to the stadium. So I think if you give them that option and you give them a safe way to cross the street, to cross the highway, I think that many of them would welcome that. Some would rather have a shuttle, and that's understandable. But I think there would be a cadre of people, especially if parking was cheaper and or more accessible, less of a hassle across the highway.
Let me ask this, and Carl, I'll go to you with this first, and as a follow-up on this. How about one time directing traffic only one way on certain streets? Is that something you think would be feasible to address to kind of keep traffic moving, and one way, one direction, using Bradford one way, Kip another way, like it is on weekends, essentially, as an outlet?
Well, again, this has been looked at a lot too, and bottom line, I think if we brought them in on 6th Street and then turn left on Bradford, Bradford being one way, and then they go out Kip. And Terry, you're right about taking people out on Kip. I don't like it, but you've seen Kip early in the morning when they're buzzing down 50 mile an hour down Kip to bypass what's happening on 146.
Yep.
So we've already got it. Like I said the other day, it was gridlock, so you couldn't go out anyway. But I think we've got to look at other ways. And I know people don't like going through residential areas, but hey, when we put that many people in the 6th Street area, we got to get them out of here. Well, number one, we need to get them here, and then we need to get them out of here and make it as easy as possible for them, or they're not going to come back. And that's still why I like the idea of getting a lot of this on the other side of 146 and somehow safely getting them back over to the 6th Street area, which is where they're coming from.
On that thing, Carl, would you support maybe something, a joint project with TxDOT then to have pedestrian friendly? I don't know how you do it on a state highway. I'm just throwing it out there. A way to cross over to, so you have both a shuttle setup, but a walkable setup as well, possibly.
Yes, I do. And we have a good relationship with TxDOT. So I'm sure they would want to help us get through this. And I think that it's going to have help from other sources. Kemah can't just handle this ourselves.
Yeah. Matt, how about you? How would you address that then, particularly the summer season really coming in here, and would you support something that would be the pedestrian kind of crossing, even if it's manned or something like that?
Yes, it would. But I mean, I think we still have 2 more years of misery, until we get 3rd Street back going under the 2 bridges. That's a natural artery into West Kemah and to the Clear Lake shores. But I think we're going to just have a couple more years of misery while we wait for the bridges to get finished up.
The one thing on that too is that while one of the bridges is supposed to be a quote unquote express bridge, on the weekends, not too many people will be taking that express bridge. And most of them are going to be coming. They're going to want to stop and turn off there. And I do say this, when it's all said and done, there is going to be that longer turn lane and more lanes on the bridge, at least for coming over. So again, maybe to Matt's point, that it is going to be painful for the next couple of years. One of the things this 146 situation comes into is about the volunteer fire department there, which sits right on 146. And if you have to make a response when those heavy traffic times happen, getting across the way. But I wanted to bring up is, it has, I should say has there. Sorry, that's bad typing on my part. I will fix that here real fast as doing it. I should not say had. That's bad typing on my part. I should have proofread that. It has a fire department that is a joint community volunteer fire force. It's not just for Kemah, it's also for Clear Lake Shores and in the areas. What does you see as the future for funding Kemah Fire? Understanding that WCID plays a major role in that there, and it's not necessarily the city government there. And go with you first on this, Carl.
Well, number one, we need our fire department and we need our EMS. And back when I was president of the Emergency Service Board working with Mayor Gale, we had a 5-year plan for the fire department that would eventually have paid staff 24/7. We were even looking at our own EMS. And with that, we have a volunteer fire station building right now. And when that project was done, it was more built to house the equipment. But now fire stations are manned, and ours is manned right now. And we don't have dorms and things like that. So I know that our existing fire station, number one, if we're gridlocked on 146, we may have trouble getting the trucks out. But more importantly, in Hurricane Ike, the station had 22 inches of rain or water in it, which, now the fire station EMS facilities, they're true emergency medical facilities. And let's say a hurricane goes through. Well, in Hurricane Ike, our equipment was all in Santa Fe. We need our equipment here, and it needs to be safe, high and dry, and we need our staff there. And then also, the fire station should become the emergency management center, not only for Kemah, but for Clear Lake Shores, because Clear Lake Shores, their city hall and a police station goes underwater if we have somewhat of a rain. So this would be a shared facility, and long term for our growth, we need to look at this. And bottom line is we need to determine, which we were working on in this 5-year study, what it would take to have a station that's fully manned, and then what it would take to make sure that our fire station was equipped to handle both fire department and EMS, and then go to the public and let them decide, do we want to pay for this or not? Because it would take an increase in the fire fee to be able to do that. The other thing that I think is important is right now, WCID number 12 owns the trucks. And there was a period where they paid for them. But while I was president of the Emergency Service Board, we started in paying for the trucks, which just didn't seem right that the fire department was paying for them, but they were titled to the WCID number 12. So all those things just need to be worked out. It's not something that we can overcome, but the fire department is doing well right now. Our response time is good, and so I'm really pleased about that.
Just real quick, Mayor, Carl, before I move on to Mayor Gale to answer that question, would you support a new fire station on the west side of 146 then? Is that what you're proposing?
Well, okay, so when we negotiated with Shops of Kemah, they had a piece of property about 1 1/3 acres in behind. And one day when I was visiting with them, I just asked, well, what are you going to do with this piece of property? And they said, well, we don't need it. And I said, well, would you gift it to Kemah? And they said, yeah, we don't have a use for it. So that piece of property is probably worth $300,000. And at the time when we were doing this 5-year plan, we were thinking, hey, that'd be a great place to have the fire station so that the trucks could roll. And when we got the roadway from 518 to 96, they could roll just about any direction. They could come into Old Kemah by coming through the light there at Bell. Eventually, the road next to the shops of Kemah will run all the way to 2094. So anyway, it had a good location, and that all went by the wayside. And
Mayor, Carl, if I could ask, I said quickly. I'm sorry. I get we can go into the details of that. I want to make sure I get the same question off to everybody else here.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So my question was the West Side, and that's where obviously the shops are. So that would go ahead. Mayor Gale, to you on fire protection in Kemah. Obviously, it comes down, and I'm gonna ask a follow up question to all of you about this here a little bit. But where right now, where does it stand, and where do you see the future of it?
I would tell you that I'm very happy with the fire department staff that we have now. I think we've been through a lot of transitions. We've had some turnover with the fire department leadership, and we've had some changes with the financial structure and the fees. I do think that having a 5-year plan, at least, if not much longer term, is very important. I'm not sure I would agree that we are ready for a new fire station or a public safety building, because I think affordability for that is pretty far down the list. I did hear kind of third hand that, and maybe Mr. Wiggins can comment on this, that there is an additional building being built to help with giving the dormitories a little more space and the sleeping arrangements to accommodate the folks that are staying at the station 24/7. We did negotiate a contract with Galveston County EMS, and I could not be more pleased with the service that they've given us, the response time. It's been terrific, and we've really been very fortunate to have the cooperation of the county in working through that. I probably would look a little further out to make any facility decisions. I would like to make sure that we have good, stable staff, that they're, getting the training and the motivation and the development that they want to get, so that we keep that continuity, that they're working well with the EMS, and that we gradually look at how we need to expand as Kemah grows, or as we service other areas. That obviously comes with a pretty stiff cost, though, and as Carl pointed out, we did a long-term view of that, and it came with a hefty price tag.
Matt, how about you on as far as the fire service and how to fund it for the future?
I'll be glad to talk about that. I'm in charge of both of them right now, and of WCID 12 and the fire department. Carl just he wants to build a fire station so bad, name it after him, he can't stand it. We don't need one. We have a fire station that does more than what we need. We're also within a 2.5 mile circle of Station 6 in League City. Station 3 in League City, and we're just about a mile further from Station 6. Seabrook also has a 2.5 mile radius that covers part of our district. We have there's a reason why the WCID owns the equipment. The equipment is being purchased. The equipment that we purchase is paid for with tax dollars, with our citizens' tax dollars. WCID is a governmental agency, and we're in charge of providing fire service for this district. Kemah Volunteer Fire Department is like the Girl Scouts. They're a nonprofit, 501c3, and they're under contract to WCID 12. And that's why the equipment is owned by WCID 12. And that's the basic part of it. When Carl and Terry were there together, We had 19-minute response times on ambulance because we were under contract at Clemsey out of Webster. And we had 19-minute response times on our fire department. And right now we get a truck rolling within 100 seconds. We set a record for the house fire in Clear Lake Shores a month ago. We had a truck rolling at 44 seconds. We got the fire fee situation straight that Terry and Carl both never really addressed. She was president of the water board. He was president of the ESB. And, they complained about it. I went to the meetings and heard them complain about it. So I did the audit. I found 17 extra commercial fire fees. And we were at $10 per month for each fire fee. And now we're at $7.50 per month. We've reduced it by 25% to cover our operational stuff is what we cover that with. The water board also instituted connection fees. And for every house and every business and every hotel and everything else that comes into our district, they get to pay $1,000 to the fire department for our CIP program as far as the big equipment, not the little equipment, the big equipment, the big trucks and buildings and whatever else we need. So we've projected out about 15 or 20 years where we think we're going to be okay with what we have. We have plans. We're working on plans for a dorm and a day room. Also another couple of bays underneath that building, which would be sitting next to the lighthouse. So we're in good shape financially. We lowered our fees by about $250,000 to our citizens, and we had some turnover with leadership at the fire department. That's one of the things that I'd kind of, if things aren't working out, I will go ahead and make a change. We have a very good fire chief right now. He's been with the department for a long, long time. And he's got, we were down to a year and a half ago, we were down to 5 or 6 firefighters, and we had a full-time fire chief. Now we've limited ourselves to 25 firefighters, and we have a part-time fire chief. So we're going very, very well. We have trucks. We sold one of our trucks. We had 3. We don't need 3. We need 2. We kept the ladder truck, which we bought a ladder truck. Terry and Carl both voted for it. $1 million truck that we're still paying for. It did not add 1 point to our ISO because League City and Seabrook are so close to us. So we've straightened that out. The fire department's in good shape. EMS, I worked on EMS for a year and a half or 2 years before EMS ever got here. I was meeting with Daryl Apfel and the emergency people in Galveston because I knew Clemsey was going to die, and they did. And we got those guys in here. I think the city's paying $165 or something. Is that right, Terry?
Yes, it is.
They're paying $165 a year. To do an ambulance is $1 million a year. And we've got the best situation that we've ever had. We have an ambulance based in Kemah, and they're going to have rooms in the dormitory that we're planning out right now. And we have a backup ambulance in Bay Cliff, not in Webster. So that I'm a public safety person. I know that's the second go round that I've had to reorganize the fire department. I did it back in 2005. But this group we have right now is absolutely outstanding. They are killing it. Yeah. We get a truck out within 100 seconds all the time.
Gotcha.
Let me average under 100 seconds.
Let me give everyone, because there's a lot to unpack here. And Terry and Mayor Gale and Carl, I'm going to start with you, Mayor Gale. There was a lot that Matt had to say there. We made some swipes at you on your leadership there. Also, you, Carl, I want to give you all a chance to respond to that now. First up, you, Mayor Gale.
Well, I guess, first of all, it's easy to throw rocks, and it's always very tempting to defend myself. What I prefer to do, and I would have preferred that either candidate do, while mayor, as well as in the leadership of the fire department, the WCID 12, or anything else, we owe it to the citizens and to the community to work together and to communicate with each other. And if somebody's got a good idea or sees a problem, to go to who's ever in charge and say, hey, there's a problem. Here's how you can solve it. and sit and work through it. That's why we're in leadership positions. We're not in leadership positions to throw rocks at each other and make accusations, especially over social media. But I won't go there for right now. That is right. We did have 19-minute response time, but it wasn't on fire calls. It was on the EMS from Clemsey. And we all knew Clemsey was a problem. Clemsey's been a problem as long as I've lived in Kemah, which is almost 20 years. When I first started going to city council meetings, that's the first thing I heard about was what a problem Clemsey was. So we all knew that that was a problem, and we were trying to solve it. We were trying to come up with economical options, and the then fire chief was looking at options, both external as well as building an internal EMS. At that time, we didn't know Galveston County EMS was an option, but I'm grateful that Matt pointed that out and had some discussions, because it did help us solve a big problem. And we were able to negotiate a good deal, and we've got a great relationship with them. So I am grateful for that. I would say a couple of other things about the financial leadership. There's always a lot of different options, but putting together a 5-year plan was definitely something that we were committed to do, because we wanted to do some deliberate planning on what it was going to take to run the fire department cost effectively with the services that we were anticipating with the growth of the city. That growth didn't happen, so we didn't increase the fire department fee for that reason. Now, some changes were made. I don't believe that we had excessive equipment. We had a ladder truck that was on its last legs, so we did trade it in on a new one. That's a fact, and we had to pay the difference on the trade-in. That's a fact. So from that standpoint, I'm glad that financially it's worked out. I will say that the billing is outsourced, and the communication between the billing company and the fire department was also a problem. So I'm glad that that's been worked out, because we had many work sessions while I was on the water board with the fire department leadership as well as the billing service to try to get things resolved. And we had Joe Murray working through property by property with the rate order and the fire fees, calculating, trying to provide that billing service exactly what they needed to bill. I know Joe was let go shortly after Matt took over, and so I'm glad that the billing was all worked out by then.
Gotcha. Carl, if you can, because we may go a little bit longer than I had planned on air, because this issue took a bit longer than I thought, since it's not necessarily a city hall issue. I just wanted to get your opinions on stuff. But since Matt had gone on and made some comments about some of your leadership there, I wanted to give you a chance to address those real quickly, and then we're going to move on.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about the fire station. Okay, so I have been beat up with that over the last, I guess, 3 years or so, and I can show you emails where when Terri Gale was president of the water board, she was talking to me about how much would a new fire station cost, because we were trying to put it into the planning, which was good planning and a part of the 5-year program. And it was interesting. Matt's, I've never designed a fire station for Kemah, and never could, because it would have been a conflict of interest if I had done so. But I did provide information, and Matt over here, he starts out, it was a $5 million station. And then as the election went on, it went to $8 million. And then it went to $11 million. Well, Kemah can't afford an $11 million station. And I hate to tell you, but the drawings are not done. It just didn't happen. Okay. Now, as far as leadership here, when I was president of the Emergency Service Board, the vice president was the mayor of Clear Lake Shores. The mayor pro tem from Clear Lake Shores was on. We spent a year and a half, I think, working together to try and improve our fire department and EMS. And we didn't get that accomplished at the time. But bottom line is, we shouldn't be trashed for our time trying to do something for our community that, we were all doing as volunteers.
Okay. Enough on the fire. Is again, it's one of those things that I brought it up because while that's not necessarily a mayoral thing, let me get to one that's kind of infrastructure. That's always something that the city's got to be focused on. And I will start with you, Mayor Gale, on this one. As mayor, what will your city infrastructure priorities be, and how will you get those accomplished?
So, the biggest infrastructure problem that we have experienced that affects the residents most directly is drainage. We have some big problems with drainage. We always have. So during my first term, we did a master drainage plan for the city, the first one that's ever been done. Because there are dependencies between regions of the city. You can't just look at pockets of the city in isolation and really understand how drainage works. There were also street plans. For example, we had a plan for Anders Road, and I'm not being critical, but we had to redo that plan because of the drainage considerations that were not factored in. So now we've got a master drainage plan, and we've got some priorities and some projects that we've prioritized to chip away at that. That said, that's not the only thing. We have more to do on streets. We have some, surface problems on streets and some safety problems on streets. So we need to, Anders is still an outstanding example of that. We need to widen that street. It's dangerous, and we need to resurface it. That is planned. In fact, it's in the current CIP budget. Additionally, we've had some issues with some of the prior infrastructure projects, and I know we're probably going to get to that in a little bit, but I think the infrastructure dollars should always be spent to improve or provide something for the citizens. And we have things like the community center that have been neglected, the drainage for our city, our neighborhoods has been neglected. And I'm not a fan of the fact that we did a city hall project and we did a parking lot project that cost well over $3 million across the two of them, because that didn't really do much for the city, for the citizens.
All right, and we'll come back to a couple of those issues you mentioned there as well. Matt, you're up next about what are your infrastructure priorities going to be if elected?
I agree with Mayor Gale. There's only so many roads. I mean, we're two square miles. So you run out of infrastructure pretty quick. But besides drainage and roads, there's not a whole lot else to worry about. And the drainage part is kind of like traffic. We can get the water, to our county line, to the city line. But if League City's not ready for it and doesn't have a place to put it, there's nothing we can do. And I think the master drainage plan has worked out to be, I think it's a very good plan. It will take years for us to accomplish that. But you chip away, you take the ugly one first and you take care of that, then you move down to the next ugly one.
And Carl, next up for you, same question, but also if you wanted to give a chance to respond to what Mayor Gale had said.
Yeah, so first, I agree that probably Anders Road is one of our highest priorities, and it's kind of a racetrack right now, way too narrow. If you meet a school bus on that road, it's really kind of scary. So, and that was actually ready to go when I lost the mayor race, and the engineer that was working on it is the same engineer that ended up, I guess, doing the drainage study and then coming back and having to change those plans. But it seems to me like they should have probably changed those plans at no cost to the city, since they were the original engineer. As far as the City Hall project, bottom line is, I think everyone was unanimous in voting on that, and the council is the one that approved that. As you know, the mayor doesn't vote, so I was for that. I mean, at the time, we had 3 officers out in a metal building in back, and we had people up on the 2nd floor with 1 exit. So bottom line, when we added on, it wasn't just offices, but we we got a locker room for the police department. We got a sally port, additional parking. And as far as the parking lot project, that was approved by council too. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of talk about problems with the contractor on that project. And that really saddens me, because bottom line is I was just the mayor, and I seem to be taking the hit on that. But there was an architect on that project, and there was a contractor on that project. And Matt, remember, you made the motion to hire the contractor. So bottom line is if there's some problems, they should have been given a chance to get them taken care of. And as mayor, I'll get those problems taken care of, and we won't have to have a lawsuit. What I'll try to do is get it done to where we don't have a lawsuit against the city.
Well, now that you bring that up, though, let me go ahead, since that subject matter came up last night, and this is the newer item. Last night, the council approved hiring outside legal firm to look into the contractor and the city's handling and accounting for the city hall reconstruction. What's your reaction to that decision, Mayor Gale? Let me go with you first.
Well, first of all, we did an independent. We had an independent review of both projects done, both the City Hall project and the parking lot, the visitor center parking lot project, because there was so much controversy around it. We discovered a lot of things from that report, missing documentation, and a number of irregularities, plans that had been changed. What disturbed me the most was that the original budget for City Hall was approved by council at a budget of $710,000. When I first became mayor, I asked every single one of the city council members, how much did it actually cost? And nobody had a very clear picture. So the city administrator at the time gave me the schedule, and it finished at $1.9 million when the project was declared completed. But there are a number of things that didn't get done. Police didn't get their exercise room that they were promised. The upstairs, to even get up to the storage area, you have to navigate this very thin, flimsy ladder. There were a number of unfinished parts to the ceiling, poor design in terms of pipes that were positioned to leak down onto an equipment panel. And one of the most important things that I really was frustrated with is the drainage situation. City Hall flooded. We had some big rains in last May, and City Hall flooded just because of a poor design that had been changed at the last minute. And also we discovered that it wasn't even ADA compliant. So we've had to pay pretty close to, I would say, $100,000 between getting ADA compliant, repairing for the flooding, and other items that we've had to address. That's very frustrating, and I think irresponsible. The visitor center parking lot, I think, was intended to be a couple of small restrooms, and there was some designed to essentially flip the image of the parking lot. Why that was important escapes me, but it was originally budgeted around, I think, $250,000, but finished at $1.2 million. And there isn't really anybody, we didn't get a ride share lane out of that. We still had to pay extra for the ride share lane because that wasn't included. There clearly wasn't any oversight for these projects. There were no financial reviews. There were no progress reviews. There was no accountability. And I am shaking my head to really understand that. So once we got the data pulled together, we did, I believe there was at least one law that was broken in terms of the way that the bidding process was handled and the potential conflict of interest that existed. So we went to law enforcement. There's ongoing investigations there. And last night, council voted also to pursue looking at whether or not we should file a civil suit to recover our funds.
Let me ask Mayor Gale before I move on to Matt, and then we'll to Carl after this. When you said that there was a independent study done, who did that study? Has it been released to the public yet?
It's a public document, and it has been released through open records request. It was done by a construction project manager in a peer city.
In a peer city?
Their city manager.
Okay, I'm when you say a peer city, so someone else's city staff member looked at this, or
Yes.
say Pearson?
Yes, we went to a city that had construction project managers on staff, which is what we should have had. The project didn't have a professional project manager, independent of the city. So we went to a city that did, and said, hey, we need somebody who does this for a living. Come and look at our project. They did it for free, which I'm very grateful for. And we were able to at least get some facts to then work from, so that we could understand what was true, what wasn't true.
And so when you say they did it for free, so somebody did a study on behalf of the city of Kemah for free.
Yes.
And when you say did the council, has the council actually addressed this in open session? Because I haven't seen that. So I was just curious.
No, it was addressed in executive session. I requested this study because I didn't actually know anything about the project. Documents had been removed from City Hall, and because there was no cost to the city, I requested the project directly to the city manager of the. I requested the review directly to the city manager of the Pierce City, and I didn't really know who all was involved in the decision making on it. Gotcha.
And just to clarify, which city was that?
League City.
Okay. But this was a motion you made, or the council asked for that? I want to clarify that so folks understand on the transparency side of things.
I didn't ask council to launch the study because at the time we were actually concerned it was a criminal investigation. So we were treating it as such.
Okay. And Carl, you're going to have a chance to respond to that. Matt, first up on that, your reaction to the decision, and also hearing from Mayor Gale explained here the reaction to what council's actions were last night.
I got a lot to say about this. For years, Carl Joyner has partnered with Durotech on hundreds of $millions worth of no-bid contracts for fire stations and schools all over East Texas. Joyner Architects brochures as a line on there that if you want to help with your get a bond election approved, the Joyner Architects can help you. So they go in and fund a bond election in these little small towns, and they end up with the bid for the drawing. Carl draws the plans, and magically the contract goes to Durotech for the no-bid contract. Carl never disclosed to City Council his conflict of interest in steering these no-bid contracts to Durotech for the City Hall and the schoolhouse projects. None. City Council never approved Carl Joyner as a project manager, and he was the one who managed the project. Mayor Gale had some evaluations done by a project manager over League City, and boy, did he find some stuff. Mayor Gale received these scathing reports in February of last year, and never circulated these reports to City Council or to the city attorney. The reports listed 33 problems with the City Hall and 20 problems with the schoolhouse project. And, I don't know why Mayor Gale didn't let anybody know what was going on for 13 months. The reports were finally produced to a city council member after an open records request. Our city attorney was not involved in any of this, and I don't know why he was not notified. And I'm sure they had problems tracking down the information because most of the information had been removed by Mayor Joyner. I mean, we're missing thousands of documents. Our city attorney has made umpteen requests for the documents over periods of months, and it's whole thousands of documents are missing. Recently, a Kemah citizen received a letter from a big ivory tower law firm in Houston representing Durotech about a Facebook post on a website. The demand was to take down a post that mentioned the word kickback. The recipient of the letter is not the admin on the website. So Durotech is now taking Carl's bullying tactics and going after individuals. There's a credible witness information available from another source that indicates Carl participates in kickbacks. Whether you call it fees, commissions, consulting, blackmail, extortion, the gist of the situation is Carl is receiving part of the pie. And in this situation, we've had contractors out there who determined that the pricing was way too high on both of the projects. The City Hall project is just a damn disaster. City Council did the right thing to hire outside counsel and investigate the shenanigans between Joyner and Durotech on at least these two projects. Mr. Joyner had a duty to disclose his conflicts to the city and his relationship with Durotech, and he did not. The attorney that should be handling this case is the district attorney. the city deserved better from both Mayor Gale and Mayor Joyner on this one.
All right, Carl, a lot to unpack there again, and I'm going to give you due time here since both your opponents here have brought this issue up. I know that we've talked about it when there was a kind of a mold issue, and you had said that you had no connection to Duratec when you talked to me, but both have made accusations you had some type of connection here. Let me give you a chance to respond to what you heard from both Matt and Mayor Gale on this one.
Well, there's really some bad information going around here. And number one, I've never had anything but a professional relationship with Duratec. They're one of the top contractors in the city. We did take proposals on the contractor for City Hall and the parking lot, and we got 3 proposals. We were doing the project as construction manager at risk. Duratec by far was the best value for our city and also had the lowest fee to do the project. The numbers that are being thrown out here about the project amount and things like that and the project budget, they're just way off. And I'm not going to labor a whole lot on this, but I'm telling you, this isn't going to the DA because there never was anything there. And what's sad here is that Mayor Gale has been trashing this project from day one. And Matt, good grief, you voted for the thing and you know what the budget was. You approved the CIP on it, but for both projects. And they were done in budget. They were guaranteed to be done in budget. So anyway, I'm going to, since everyone seems to be blaming me for this, I'm going to get involved right now. What is sad is, as the architect, Tim Broadhead, which he has now passed away, so he can't protect himself, but this should have gone to them immediately if there was a study done and given a chance to come forward with the information. A lot of the things that's been mentioned here tonight, they weren't a part of the contract. And it's the architect that is the one that when he signs the pay request, he's saying that the work is there. The second floor was never planned to be more than a storage area. That's why there's just a stair. If it was going to be occupied, you'd have to have 2 stairways. So that's important. And really, I don't know what the things are that are cut or whatever, and I don't know where the documents are because Nick Habe would have had them in the plan room or whatever. I never took any document, okay, except the file. Go ahead and laugh, Matt. I didn't take any documents from City Hall except the ones that were in my files, which were from the agendas that we had while I was mayor. So yeah, don't blame that stuff on me. And if you want a set of the documents, they would have been submitted by Duratec. That was part of the closeout documents. And there's a lot of documents that, quite frankly, I've now seen, but I don't know why they were produced, but now you're saying they're not there. I'm not the keeper of the records and wasn't keeper of the records when I was mayor. And Mayor Gale, you're not either. And Matt, you weren't either. But yeah, I'm going to get on this and I'm going to show everyone out there it's not true. And it's weird. I'm going to put this up here. Hard to see, but it's a proclamation that the council and the mayor gave to Duratec for doing such a good job. Okay? So make fun of it all you want to, but we're going to show, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, show the citizens of Kemah that the City Hall project was approved by council. I didn't vote, and the city council approved everything that went on with this project, and there's no shenanigans. None.
Carl, let me ask you then. So you said it came in that, let me just talk about City Hall first and the parking lot as separate issues. You said that it came in at budget. Mayor Gale said it was supposed to be 710,000. Do you recall if that's what the price was?
No, it's around 1.6 million.
That was the initial budget approved by council.
Right. And then there was other line items that went with that. And I think the parking lot project, I haven't looked at that in a while, but it's somewhere around 1.2 million. And the Uber parking wasn't a part of that project and hadn't even been planned because the Uber parking kind of came about towards the last, when I was mayor.
The drop off lane,
Yeah,
not parking, but drop off lane. Correct.
Mhm.
That's in front of what was the visitor center from there. The
So
other,
I'm
I want to give you a chance to.
I'm going to get.
Go ahead.
Answer. Durtech wasn't even given this information. Why would they not be given this information? If you look Durtech up, their motto is builders of integrity. Okay, they don't need this stuff out here saying that they take kickbacks and things like that. I mean, I'm just hoping that the city doesn't get sued here with false information being put out.
All right, and let me ask you there too, because it's a serious allegation both Matt made and maybe more directly toward you. And Mayor Gale said that she thought criminal acts had taken place. I'm not sure who she's referencing there, but to give you a chance, Carl, to answer that. Do you think anyone did anything illegal?
No.
In how that was
handled? Not. Absolutely not. And
were you aware of this complaint being filed with the DA? Because this is the first I've heard of it.
No.
Okay. But you're saying the parking lot came in on budget and that the city hall, which was the more expensive of the project, yes. 1.6 million was what a council approved.
Around that area, yeah.
Around that area.
You could pull the CIP and all those budgets were put on there. And bottom line is when the project came in to be awarded the guaranteed maximum price, we would have showed what the budget was. Council would have never approved it if the budget was 750, and the budget was never at 750. And I don't know why staff would say that it was, because they were heavily involved in this project. It was a big deal for City Hall.
And you had no, and again, because the mayor has a lot of say in what can or can't be done in activities there. You weren't involved in any of the planning afterwards or communications with anything that led to these, as Mayor Gale said, cost overruns?
There wasn't any cost overruns. None.
Okay. I just want to say, so you didn't serve either as a project manager or anything like that. You turned that over to someone at City Hall.
There was an architect that run the project along with the contractor. Okay. And then Nick Habe, who was our community director, he really was the one that kind of communicated on a daily basis with the contractor, and was the one on site that reviewed things with the architect.
Gotcha. Okay. I just want to give you a chance to clarify those issues there, since they were brought up along the way. And this one, we could go on for an hour. I know. I wish we had the time to get in a lot of these issues. I know this has been talked about a lot online, but wanted to give everyone a chance to respond to that. Let's and then get on to the next one here. Y'all have either been either mayor, members of council, or both. Name one issue or initiative you accomplished while in city office and why it proves you should be mayor. And we'll go back to you first, Carl.
Well, number one, I think one of the biggest things that I accomplished while I was mayor was bringing Team Kemah to where everyone really worked together well, and the police department, fire department, city staff, and we were well respected, and we were a shining star out there in the community, and well respected, family friendly, and a number one attraction in Kemah. And so while I got the $2 million worth right away of future streets, brought Tookie's Hamburgers to the area, worked with council to get Shops of Kemah the area, negotiated the lot in behind the shops of Kemah, got Bell Road extension and the Evergreen Parkway next to the shops of Kemah done. Started the left-hand turn lane at Kemah Village that we worked on. I think I worked on that for almost 7 years while I was on council and mayor, and working through TxDOT to get that done. We managed.
I asked for one issue. I'm sorry. We're really short of time. You gave 3, so I'm going to give everybody
one issue. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. No, it's all right. And but I will give you. You said 3. I will give everyone a chance to 3. Matt, same question to you.
I was mayor 9 months after Hurricane Ike, and there was just having the lights on in the town was a big deal. I can't think of a whole lot of accomplishments, although we did a couple of things back then that were good. We started CN Park with the water board, and we also built the Lighthouse water tower, which is one of the crazier things I've ever been involved in. But that was a joint deal between the water board and the city of Kemah.
Gotcha. Mayor Gale, again, I'll give you a chance to say 3. I know it says 1 in the question there, but since and that's my fault, I let Carl go on there. I was actually interested in listening to that. The 3 areas since you've been mayor that you're or an initiative that you've accomplished while in office that proves you should remain mayor.
Well, I think the first thing, as I've talked about, is drainage. That master drainage plan, when I was campaigning, resoundingly, I heard from the citizens that not enough attention had been paid to drainage in any part of the city. And that the only time it ever came up was when somebody was running for office and nothing ever got done. So I made that my top priority. And the master drainage plan is something I'm really proud of, but we've actually accomplished quite a lot associated with that master drainage plan, including not only engaging the entire community around it, but also we've been able to make significant progress with some of the ditches and areas in Kemah that had been ignored for many years. Our public works team actually, because we were low on budget, our public works team made some progress in reshaping and expanding the culvert size in a part of Jarbo Ditch that was a choke point that was causing problems back into South Kemah, as well as contributing to the problems with Kemah Oaks. And we're now to the point where we're bidding out the project for the Kemah Oaks pond renovation. So I'm very happy with that accomplishment, especially. We've also done some good work on streets and traffic, but much like Matt, based on everything that's happened, part of what I'm most proud of is that we have survived and we have stayed together, united as a city through the pandemic, the death of the police chief, the flooding that occurred in City Hall as well as in the city, hurricane threats. We have had a number of unprecedented obstacles, not the least of which was the global pandemic that set us back a year. So I am pleased that we have come through that. We've come through it as a united team with staff, and I'm very pleased that the culture that we've built in City Hall is constructive and it's a good collaborative culture. I think we have a lot that we can still accomplish, but having a good, strong staff and a good culture in City Hall is most important to be able to do that.
And my apologies to everyone. We've gone long here, but we've got a couple more questions before we get to your final statements here. Good information coming out from all of y'all here tonight. And this is somewhat of a one. What role have you played personally in keeping political infighting a hot topic? Do you see a need for change? Why or why not? And if so, how will you bring change? And so let me start with you, Mayor Gale, on that question.
Well, I would tell you that I have chosen to disengage myself from the infighting. As I said earlier, it's almost irresistible when I see a post that has misinformation in it or accusations. And and words that are not meant just to win an election, but to ruin lives. I don't understand that. I don't appreciate it, and I don't condone it at all. I think any administration, if you ever talk to somebody who says my administration was flawless, I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't make any mistakes, you'd be talking to God, because we've all made mistakes. But the best thing we can do for the community, for the citizens, the businesses, and to attract the visitors that we depend on for 87% of the revenue in our general fund, we've got to be outwardly focused. The infighting does nothing for anybody. I have received advice and calls and help from every single former mayor except the two that are running against me here. And that's a shame, because I've asked for help. And, I think the best thing that we can do is unite, and fight the enemies that we have, which are, criminals and disasters. We don't need to be fighting against each other. And I have disengaged completely from that on social media to the best extent possible.
Gotcha. Matt, same question to you.
Mayor Gale, anything you've asked me to do, I've done. I've spent hours working on some projects for you since you've been mayor. As far as the infighting, the worst thing that goes on in our town has been Wayne Dosofino. He's been around a long time. Carl pays him, and he's going to say he didn't. He doesn't, but he does. And, Carl keeps, he has these Kemah connection where he attacks various citizens, Terry, myself, fire department, whatever it is. We defend ourselves as we can, and he's filed 4 ethics complaints against me, totaling 439 pages. And it's constant open records request, and he doesn't produce any open records requests. He doesn't have any documents. So this is, as long as he keeps it up, he is going to keep going. Carl is the one who introduced hate in this town as far as campaigning a long, long time ago.
Part of it, though, is that what would you do to change it if you're elected?
Send Carl to an island far, far away.
Okay. Carl, let me ask you, I'm going to have you the same question, but I have a quick follow-up with you too on that. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, when I ran for mayor in 2019, I really didn't know what social media was, and really tried to run a clean campaign. And Mayor Gale and former Mayor Matt Wiggins totally ripped me big time, constantly. And quite frankly, I lost the election by 28 votes. And you can't combat social media. You just can't. And so I got on social media, and yeah, I've done some Kemah Connection videos, but I can back those up with actual meeting notes and everything else. And by the way, I could do that because I was a citizen, okay? And I paid for those videos myself. Now, Mr. Wiggins thinks it's okay to use public funds to trash me, which he did in the last election. And he's sitting there laughing, thinks it's funny. But bottom line is we have proof that he has spent over $6,000 of public funds sending out letters in the water bills to trash me. And hey, that's kind of hard to overcome, okay? But everyone needs to know using public funds, anything over $2,500 is a jailable expense. So bottom line is that needs to stop. And as far as Wayne Dolcefino, yeah, everyone wants to say I'm paying him, but I'm in his videos too, and I don't appreciate that either. and I'm not paying him. I'm not his client. I keep saying that, but Mr. Wiggins over here and loves to keep saying and putting out lies about me. But I did a video with Wayne Dolcefino that he offered it to Matt and Terry also, and I've kind of had a chance to tell my side of the story over the last couple of years, and it's been tough. Bashing my business, and bashing me, and they've been doing it on this tonight, trying to hurt my reputation. And this is a non-paying job, and I just want to serve Kemah the best I possibly can. And it's tough to do in Kemah. The political infighting, I wish would stop. And I think I'm the mayor that can get it stopped. I did it a couple of years ago, and we enjoyed a couple of years of all working together with Team Kemah. Then that fell apart. But bottom line is I get up every morning and I read my scripture, which helps me get through the day. And I pray that we all sit down when I win the race and work with council and put together, draw a line in the sand. Let's forget the past. Where are we going as a city moving forward? And let's do it as a team. And if we work together and derive this plan together with mayor and council, then we're all going to agree on that eventually. And then we can move forward. And there shouldn't be a lot of infighting as we do that.
Gotcha.
Kemah deserves that.
Yeah, look, Carl, let me ask you, because you brought up a point that on the offer that Mr. Dolcefino had offered to you, and it's what someone does on their side business is their own deal. We should point out he's a consulting firm now. Wayne's no longer active reporter and saying a news deal. It's a consulting firm, and he did send out a press release. You referenced that about it's basically you making a pledge of no attack type of thing. And Terry, I think Mayor Gale, you've confirmed that you were offered and didn't respond, and Matt, I think the same with you is correct. Was that free, or did you have to pay for that, Carl?
I did not have to pay for it.
All right,
and
neither you or anyone who works on behalf of your campaign.
No.
All right. So as a follow-up, since you say that, because there are a lot of times someone will have someone do work for their campaign, and then they go out and hire subcontractors. Have you, so we can clear this up once and for all on the record, have you paid other people who may have then paid for these pieces that people complain about from Dolcefino Consulting?
No.
So if you swore on a Bible, there's no one doing this on your behalf then?
No.
All right. You haven't paid somebody for that, and no one's out there doing this on your behalf?
No.
And you have no knowledge of who's actually doing that?
No.
Okay. I just want to, and to you, Matt, you say that, but do you have any proof of what you allege about Carl having involvement here?
No.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Mayor Gale, about you?
I do not. But I would tell you two things. I have had continued open records requests from Wayne Dolcefino, some of which documents that came from those open records requests ended up with Mr. Joyner. So I believe there is a connection there. And I would also tell you that nothing negative has ever been in any of the videos that I've watched. And I have to admit, I really don't watch them very much because they're tiresome. But nothing negative has been put in his videos about Mr. Joyner. But I believe, as Matt said, all the rest of us have been scorched.
Gotcha.
So,
And TJ, I'll correct what I said. There was testimony in Galveston County District Court by a previous mayor that he had paid Wayne Dolcefino back in 2011, 2012. He also indicated that Carl Joyner had paid him back then for some work.
Well, but that doesn't necessarily mean this time around, and that was my question.
I don't know. You're right.
Right. And to be fair, we're talking about current issues and not in the past there. So in another hot topic, I'm going to try to get through these here pretty fast here as well. While the city administrator position has been around for years, it's just come up recently. The city attorney, this surprised me some. I'd never know, said the city never legally created the position. Do you agree or disagree with that determination? I know Mayor Gale, I think from my reporters at the meeting last night said you disagreed with that assessment from that. I'm surprised that would even come up that way, because city administrator has been around as long as I've covered Kemah. And I want to give you a chance to respond for what the attorney Greg said.
Yeah, there was an ordinance drafted to make the city administrator position official, and to me, it matches very closely the job description we had. And as you said, we've had that position for a number of years. So I don't think that there's any quabble over having the position. It's just a matter of making sure we've got all the right items in the ordinance. The governance of the city, we just have to be careful that we make sure that reporting lines are clear and that the staff doesn't end up, specifically the city administrator, doesn't end up with 6 masters that have conflicting priorities or that might be fighting amongst themselves. So I think as long as the mayor and council roles work together in terms of how they manage the city administrator role and any other staff role, particularly the officer level staff roles, I think it's fine. I didn't know it wasn't documented by ordinance.
So you have no problem with what going forward now to just get it on the books, right? Okay. Carl, let me ask you about that. I mean, you have dealt with city administrators in many roles. Were you surprised when you heard that? And do you think it's a correct, at least opinion, I should say, not a ruling, by the city attorney?
Well, this is kind of a really new one, and I'm not totally familiar with it, but I believe the fact that we've had a city administrator for I don't know how many years now. I think by law it probably means that we have that covered. But bottom line is I'm glad that Terry brought this up in that one of the things I would do as mayor is sit down with council and really determine what everyone's roles are, because a city administrator can have 6 bosses, okay? And really, the council is supposed to set policy. The mayor doesn't vote on it. And then it's up to the mayor to carry that out according to what the council has asked for. So we absolutely need a city administrator. It's a very important position for our city, and we can't do without it.
And you somewhat answered the question I wanted to give. I'll give everyone about that, but it'll come around to it, is that who should the city administrator answer to? First, let me, Matt, about what had come up. First I heard of it was last night, about that it needed to be on the books as actually a defined position. Wanted to get your reaction to that. And go ahead, and I'll give it to you first about who should the city administrator answer to, council or the mayor, or in conjunction with the mayor, which is normally how a city administrator position would go.
It really doesn't matter to me how you divide it all up. The trick is to get the right city administrator that can work with everybody. I think the city administrator should also report to council. So I don't have a problem with however council wants to divide the city administrator up.
Mayor Gale, how do you see how that role should be for the city administrator? Should it be, Carl had mentioned it, that shouldn't answer to 6 people, should be able to go to kind of a 1 point person after council set policy. Where do you think the city administrator should answer to?
Well, like Matt, it doesn't really make any difference to me, as long as the direction is clear. What I would just be concerned about is that the direction from council is consistent and that it's decided in the meetings, so that we don't have people falling offline and giving, inconsistent direction. I think
Gotcha.
When council gets out of sync, then that's a risk. But as long as council and the mayor stay in sync and give the direction in the context of the decisions made in the meetings, I think it's fine.
And Carl, let me ask you this. Do you think the system as it's set up is fine now? We saw Dickinson recently go away from the city administrator to a city manager, granted a larger city, but council, city manager, form of government, where the mayor finally gets a vote there. And I'm going to ask the rest of y'all this too, but let me ask you, would you be in favor of seeing that change of form of government if the voters approved it?
Well, number one, this actually came up back in, must have been 2018, I believe and that was voted down by the public like 80% to 20%. So I don't see why
was that a non-binding referendum though? Was it not?
It was binding.
Oh, it was a binding one. Okay, forgive me. So
So I would think that things haven't changed enough in Kemah to even bring that up.
Gotcha. Matt, how about on that issue? Would you be in favor of seeing a form of government and knowing what Carl just said, that it had gone down in flames? The city voters seem to be okay with how the system is.
I'm okay with being a general law city.
Gotcha. Same with you, Mayor Gale?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So we can get to your closing comments here. I forgive me for skipping this earlier. I had a lot of these questions. Folks on the west side, they complain that they're often left out or they get little or no input on a lot of issues. And whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but I had at least 7 emails from folks on that side who wanted to know. As mayor, what will you do to address to make sure those concerns are met? And Carl, I'll go to you first on this one.
Well, so when I was mayor, we had what we called the super neighborhood groups that represented the 6 distinct areas of Kemah. So we have South Kemah, we have West Kemah, we have Kemah Village, we have Old Kemah, and we have Bayview Acres. And all of them have different things that they require. And because of the super neighborhood groups that we would go out as a staff and mayor and council and meet with these people, we would walk away with what their concerns were. And so we had a list of everyone's concerns in the 6 distinct areas. So, and I want to bring the super neighborhoods back, and because it just provides for better communication. And I want to bring back the mayor letters and things like that. It really falls around communication, and people know what is going on. And we can't rely on people to watch the meetings. We've got to get the information out to them.
Matt, same question to you, sir. I own property in West Kemah, and I agree with the people in West Kemah that not much happens over there from the city. And I don't something specific would have to would come up before I would have an answer on what I would do over there. Drainage has been an issue for a while. I think most of that's gotten taken care of, and there's not a whole lot of issues that I see that really are jumping up at me right now.
Gotcha. Mayor Gale, same question to you.
A couple of things. I do think that the drainage, we've tried to start addressing that with our in-house public works team, and they've done a lot to cover the whole city. But I know that they've done some of the ditches in West Kemah that said that needs to be constant, and I think there's still a lot more to do because there's still some flooding that goes on there. And I just heard last night about the condition that the culverts are in underground on Miller Avenue, which I didn't know. There is a new, well, I say new, it's probably been planned for somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 years, but the Star Harbor development that is just now starting to, I think, make some motions around development that did come up and was not well communicated to the community. So I think to Carl's point, communication has been lacking. It's been tough to get everybody together with COVID. We were having some neighborhood meetings, but had to stop that obviously when the pandemic hit. And there are still folks who prefer not to meet in person. We could have done a better job with communicating. We lost our communications resource due to budget cuts, and that was a hard hit. So we've probably not done as good of a job on that as we can. But I know we are working on both some electronic and mostly electronic forms of communication so that we can save the money of printing, but probably will end up doing some newsletters more frequently.
And it should put out, I actually covered one of those Westside meetings as well. And then all of a sudden COVID came in and it did knock off some initiatives there, to be fair, all on the way. And now we've got two more questions. Then we're going to go to your closing statements here. I'll go with you on this one first, Matt. If elected, what will your first priority be that will make life better for Kemah residents in the future?
Straighten out 6th Street.
You want to elaborate on that? That's good enough.
It's a mess, and until you get that solved, we have a potential problem with our income, with our reputation, and everything that we stand for in our town. Gotcha.
Mayor Gale, same question to you.
I think public safety in general, while 6th Street has been an issue, we have made a lot of improvements on that. But we still need to make sure that we're patrolling the neighborhoods, that everything's safe and secure for our residents. And public safety is my top priority. And that includes some of the things that keep people safe as well, like drainage, keeping them safe from flooding.
And now, Carl, same question to you.
Well, I think all three of us have public safety as our number one concern. And again, it has to do with our reputation, and it really has to do with people feeling safe here, not just our visitors, but more importantly, our residents. And I agree with Mayor Gale that we need to get back to probably more patrols. And back when I was mayor, we really asked that the officers get to know the citizens, and if they see some walking down the street, to stop and say hi and introduce themselves. And I think it's important that our citizens know that we have police officers out there and that they can feel safe living in our city.
Gotcha. And final question now, and this may be a shock to some. Each of you now gets a chance to talk about name one action by each of your opponents as mayor that you think helped improve the city of Kemah, and explain that answer. I'm going to start off with you, Matt.
I've always admired Carl because when we were working on the conference center project, he went down to the legislature and got 2 special interest bills passed in the legislature 2 straight years that provide us an opportunity to do a conference center in our town. And I've always admired him for his tenaciousness on getting that done. Terri, been trying to think, kind of off the wall on that one, but she is by far the best looking mayor we've ever had. And, we've mostly had a bunch of old fat white guys that lived on the water, and she's definitely an improvement there.
Well, I didn't mean as action taken there. Just to give you a chance to say something about Mayor Gale as far as actions as mayor. Nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Let me ask you now, Mayor Gale. Same question to you.
Well, I think when Mr. Wiggins was mayor, we had a keen focus on developing of parks. And I really appreciated that. That's something we have continued. And particularly now that KCDC is working actively on improving the 57-acre park, I think that original vision continues to develop. I think Mayor Joyner did a good job of having a vision on the connectivity of the city in terms of the streets and how and the plan to connect vertically all the way down to 96 from 518 and subsequently up through to 2094. So I think that vision of the streets connectivity was certainly noteworthy.
All right. And Carl, this is the last Q&A question. We'll go to closing statements. Same question to you.
Well, I'll start with Mayor Gale. I think she was mayor during one of our most challenging times that anyone has had to go through with COVID, and she got us through that, and I appreciate that. And with former Mayor Wiggins, I was just really kind of getting involved a little bit, I guess, in politics. But I think what I remember most about Matt is that it's amazing, but drainage was a big issue back then, and he accomplished a lot to improve that.
Thank you all for tonight. We do appreciate it. And I'm sorry I went a good more than 40 minutes long just on the Q&A, but now you get to make your final pitch. I will say this, the viewers have been enjoying it. We have large numbers that I've been tracking our numbers tonight, rivaling what we had just the other night with Clear Creek ISD School Board, which had 9 candidates going, by the way, and lasted longer, not as long as this one. So now, as I said earlier, we did the number pick. And first up with up to 3 minutes. You don't have to use the full 3 minutes, but up to 3 minutes with your final pitch to voters. And again, as I expressed to y'all, this is one that's just about yourself. Don't bring up about your opponents. No negative attacks during this part, because I don't want to have to go back and forth. This is just about your campaign. And what you will, and your vision is for the city. Matt, you're scheduled to go up first, and you're up, sir.
Public safety is by far, I think, the most critical issue facing our town, and we've covered it a lot tonight. I think we restaffed the police. We invade 6th Street with a police force. We have hourly police patrols. We get 4-wheelers in Old Kemah on weekends with cops that we can move around quickly. I think the 6th Street stuff has just got to be solved. On a looking forward basis, one thing that didn't come up tonight was the Meritage project. We have some sort of agreement that there's a dispute about whether it's an agreement or not. But the Meritage project is going to be an additional either 418 or 518 homes, and it could go as high as 600. And that is going to be that's going to provide a whole quantum of cost of services to the city. The Kemah finance officer has run some numbers with a increase in property taxes from 17 cents to 25 cents and 30 cents to cover the cost of services. And depending on how our final agreement ends up with them, I think that's going to be a huge impact on our city and what our flexibility is going forward. And keeping a cost containment in the growth of our expenses. I think that's going to be one of our serious issues on a going forward basis. Kemah Oaks, I realize we're going to be doing some work out at Kemah Oaks. I've studied it some. The volume of that pond has to get bigger. We got to figure out a way to get that bigger. I know the first numbers we got were huge, but we have to figure out a way to get the volume in that pond bigger. We got to figure out something else to do with Jarbo Bio. There's all kinds of little small things, that make life easier or harder depending on how you get it done. But I've been a councilman twice. I've been president of the water board twice. I've been mayor once. I fix things. I make things work. We have a fire department that works. We have a water district that has lowered the fees and water bills to over 700 residents a month pay smaller water bills now than they did before. So it's a matter of getting in, getting dirty, and making it happen, and for the best of our citizens. I'm a big proponent of parks. And I think I'm excited about the potential at the 57-acre park. And that's about it.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Next up is Mayor Gale. Mayor Gale, you have up to 3 minutes to make your final pitch to the voters.
Being mayor of the city of Kemah has been an honor. It's not something I take lightly, and it's not a tool to enhance image, ego, monetize. I never have and never will. use it for anything but service to the community. I came to the role with some priorities in mind and a lot of hopes and aspirations and a lot of lack of knowledge. I've learned a lot, but I think we've accomplished a lot, and I'm incredibly proud of the accomplishments we've made in drainage with our master drainage plan and our projects. In public safety, we've had some incredible challenges that we've turned around. The streets that we've completed and have more progress in. We have engaged the community and volunteers in an unprecedented level and hope to do that again, COVID allowing. And fiscal responsibility. We have detected some real fiscal problems with the city that we've started to turn around, and there is no tax increase proposed. Mostly, I came to the role with a philosophy of servant leadership. I listen, I follow up, I understand what's important to people, not just what they're saying, but what's really frustrating to them. And I'm a real person who shares some of the pains that they go through. So I can put myself in their position, feel that empathy, and look at it from the standpoint of a citizen or a voter. I maintain constant interaction with the citizens. I don't just come around at election time. And I'm a real member of the community. We have been through some unprecedented challenges during my term, and it's been tough, but I've never missed a city council meeting. I continue to show leadership, even during combative or conflict times. I've never stopped answering my phone and my emails. I may miss a message in the middle of the night, but I always follow up on it. And my priorities continue to be public safety, drainage, continuing to repair and restore some of the facilities and things that have been neglected, continuing to develop parks and community events and make Kemah continue to be the fun place that the residents enjoy, that the businesses enjoy, and that the visitors come to enjoy. And to continue to drive fiscal responsibility so that we can afford to do the things that we need to do and don't spend money in ways that aren't a priority to the community. I have been a member of this community for many years, and I'm committed to continue contributing to its enhancement, regardless of who is mayor. It would be my honor to serve Kemah again for the next 2 years as your mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Gale. Appreciate it. And to wrap things up with his elevator speech and final bid for votes from the voters is former Mayor Carl Joyner. Carl?
Thanks, TJ. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to be your mayor again. I was mayor for 4 years, on city council for 3 years, 2.5 years president of KCDC, and was 1.5 years on the emergency service board as president. So I've got a lot of experience, and I think what brings me as the best mayor right now would be that I've had my own business now for over 40 years, and I have built up a real reputation that, quite frankly, I've been hurt some by being the mayor of Kemah before. But bottom line is, my pledge to you is to get back to the way Kemah was, where we all work together for the good of Kemah. And I talked about drawing the line in the sand and saying, hey, let's cross this line and let's start all working together for the future. Forget the past. Again, I get up every morning, I read scripture, and I feel like we can get there, but we're going to have to stop living in the past. Let's all get together and decide where we want to take Kemah, because Kemah is a great place. I mean, we're a #1 attraction in Houston, Texas, and people pay attention to us. We're all good friends with all the mayors around the Clear Lake area, and bottom line is we're now working together as the Clear Lake area to make our area the best it could possibly be. And if you think about it, we have another attraction, #1 attraction in Houston, Texas, and that's the Space Center. So, and they're just a little ways away. So sure, public safety is important, drainage is important, but experience matters, professionalism matters. And we didn't talk about the problem with short-term rentals tonight, but That's becoming a real problem. The Meritage thing, we've been working on having a developer come into that 88 acres for a long time. And I, for one, am glad they're coming. And we as a city got to work together to where it doesn't require a tax increase. And I think if we can get the right balance of retail with the residential area, we can bring in enough sales tax to be able to cover the added cost. And that doesn't take into consideration the fact that, so we have another couple of thousand people shopping at our stores here in Kemah. This is a good thing for Kemah if we really work it right. I would like to be your mayor again, and I think I'm the right person to do that. Thank you.
Thank you all. And we lost Matt's signal right in the middle of that last one there. Just wanted to bring everyone back up on screen as best as possible there. But as I said, we lost Matt Wiggins' signal. Thank you all for being a part of this tonight. And thanks to our chamber partners at the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce. Reminder to you now that coming up here, we have our next forum with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce. It's coming up on Thursday, April the 15th. At 5 o'clock is the position 5 candidates for Clear Creek ISD School Board. And then at 6 o'clock, it's the at-large candidates for school board. Dr. Glenn Friedman will be the moderator for those forums coming on there. We also have coming up on Monday night a town hall on the Santa Fe EDC vote. And then on Tuesday night, we're going to be having the Lamarck and City Council mayor, as well as the TCISD school board races. So we'll have more details out on that as well. Thank you all again for participating on TJ Ald's I-45 Now.
Thank you.